Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Ecoffee with Experts. I am your host, Matt Fraser. And on today, I have a very special guest with me, James Kaatz. James is the co-founder and CEO of Illumination Marketing, a full-service media and marketing agency headquartered in Houston, Texas. He has over 20 years experience in the marketing and branding fields, helping small to mid-sized companies get more traffic, leads, and sales by harnessing the power of the internet. When not wearing his marketing hat, James spends his free time sitting on various boards around the Houston area, leading the Committee for Networking and Business Development for the Sci-Fair Chamber of Commerce, and donating to various charitable causes. James, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you for having me, Matt. I appreciate you reaching out and inviting me on the podcast. I'm excited.
Yeah, it's awesome. So, you've had an interesting journey so far. We were talking about it off camera. What kind of person were you in high school?
Oh, in high school, man, that's going way back. That's decades ago, man.
Can't be that back.
Oh my gosh.
You don't look that old.
Well, I appreciate it. I'm hoping I'm aging well. But in high school, I was a quiet kid. I was always into athletics. So I did that. I did wrestling in high school. That was exciting. Where I found my love of really television and things like that is I produced the high school news for a couple of years. Yeah. And it was cool. We did a newscast every morning. We had cameras and green screens and we had music that we broadcast to the whole school, and it was closed circuit TV. So in high school, I really got an exposure to advertising, radio, and television from a very young age. And I fell in love with it amongst many other things in my lifetime. But it was very much the building blocks that led it to me. But I was so quiet, like you never would have thought I would have gone into anything with sales or public or anything like that. And, I guess I came out of my shell within the next 10 years or so. But yeah, that's the high school journey right there.
Yeah. So did you go to college with the excuse me, my apologies. Did you go to college with the intention of learning about marketing, or how did you get involved in marketing?
No. So I actually graduated. I went to school at Stephen F. Austin State University, and I went for the radio and television program. So I grew up in Austin, Texas, which is really known for the University of Texas. They're a very big school down here. And they're a fantastic university, but they have a really good radio and television and film program. However, to really touch the equipment, or at least this is what I was told back in high school, and I believed it, you had to be in the top 10% of the class. And otherwise, you really just learned the theory behind it, but you weren't really that hands-on. And I've always been such a hands-on guy and a hands-on learner. So Stephen F. Austin had a reputation around town of being a very good secondary option for people who are interested in radio and television. So I went up there because I could start getting on air and doing radio and producing TV from day one as a freshman. And I'm like, okay, so I went to do that just because I was so much more of a hands-on person. So I went with the idea of I wanted to go for radio and television. I knew that from my high school days, and I was very entertained and interested in it. And my life journey up into that point as well really led to that, which I'm sure we'll cover here in a little bit.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So you got involved in television in college. You went to the University of Texas. That's what it's called, right?
No, I went to Stephen F. Austin State University.
Stephen F. Austin State University, and then
absolutely small school up in Northeast Texas.
My apologies. Okay, so sorry about that. But so you went in there with the intentions of getting into broadcasting and TV and radio. And did you? I really did. And when you graduated, what was the next step then? Did you do any internships at TV stations or publicly owned TV stations, or where did that take you?
Sure. I was lucky enough in college where our college had a radio station and it had a TV station. And so during our coursework, we would actually go in and work at these real stations. We did semester shifts. So it was really cool. I'd be like Friday night from 6 to 10 on the radio and things like that for one semester. The next semester, I would produce the Christmas special for the TV show or something along those lines. And so there's always where you could get hands-on with the different positions of what you might want to do, which was really neat. But even taking it back a step, I didn't ever really graduate with the intention of going into radio and television. So my biggest passion in life when I was young was professional wrestling, right? And from such a young age, I watched it, and you look at all the big stars, the Hulk Hogans, the Randy Savages, the Roddy Pipers, and you're like, oh man, they're superheroes, right? Yeah. And so I really got the passion for it. And so I remember watching an interview with Iron Larry Sharp back when I was, I don't know, in 7th or 8th grade. And he goes, if you want to be a professional wrestler, you need to get into amateur wrestling. And so that's the reason I chose to go into amateur wrestling. And I did fairly well. But when I got to my senior year, I had an opportunity came up, and I went to a local professional wrestling show in Austin. And I talked to the guys, and they go, hey, guess what? We'll give you an opportunity to become a professional wrestler. I'm like, oh my God. So, I went and asked my parents, and my mom strictly forbid it. And my dad, who's usually the hard ass on everything, says, you know what? Let him chase his dreams. And so my mom relented and agreed to it. So I became a professional wrestler when I was a senior in high school. So I started getting paid and traveling around the state and doing all the traveling and working on my character. So when I went to college, my idea was that I was going to prepare on the technical side of the radio and the television to help set me up for the media side of the professional wrestling, so I could end up doing that for a career.
Okay.
Right. And so I wrestled my way through college. I was a professional wrestler for 8 years, and it took me all the way around the United States. I wrestled several famous people. I was on TV in 5 different states. I went to Mexico. Wow. I was on international TV there. I wrestled Mexican movie stars. So it was a really cool little adventure. And that's really where I was trying to prepare myself for the radio and television to do the more technical aspect of the wrestling.
Wow. That's so neat. So tell me, how did you go from being in wrestling and pursuing that as your dream to owning a marketing agency?
Absolutely. Great question. So while I graduated college, I was still doing professional wrestling. I was starting to get a little bit burned out on it. There's a lot of traveling for not a lot of money, and you're tearing up your body because the money is only at the high levels, and it's even the highest at the high levels. Like the lower level famous guys still don't make all that much money, or at least they didn't back in my day. And this is 15 years ago, but
probably still.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. I haven't talked to them in a while. But so I was doing that, and I got through college because everybody told me to have a backup plan, even from the professional scouts, the Tom Pritchards of the world. Rodney Mack was a guy who was a personal mentor to me, and all of them stress, always have a backup, because you never know when you're going to land on your head, your neck's going to be broken, and you're going to need your brain for the rest of your life. So that's what I did. Went through college. I graduated college and I moved to Houston because the opportunities for wrestling, Houston's a hub for the United States. It really is. So you can go anywhere you want. You're 6 hours from New Orleans, you're 4 hours from Dallas, 3 hours from Austin, and you can really get anywhere. You're 8 hours from Mexico. So you can get anywhere from Houston, and that's traveling by car. And so I moved to Houston, and I got a job here at a ad agency in town, because I graduated. I'm like, I am never going to use my college degree. Like, what a worthless college degree, radio and television. Like, and then even if you get a job in radio and television, most jobs, and especially in small markets, you're making like $10 an hour. So you're going to be broke for the rest of your life at that point. And so I'm like, what a worthless degree. So I got lucky that I got in with a company called Ad Results here in Houston. And what they did was live radio endorsements for big companies. And so I started off as a traffic coordinator, where I would listen to ads all day. And the client that I was assigned from the very beginning was Carrabba's Italian Kitchen. So picture this. I was listening to 1-minute commercials for Carrabba's Italian food for 8 hours a day. So by the end of the
front door. Just wait a minute. You were listening to you were listening to commercials from one advertiser for 8 hours a day?
Yes. And I was logging it in to make sure that they ran correctly. They said the copy right, because these are all live radio endorsements. So it's the DJ going, hey, you really need to check out this product. They have this, and this feature. Come out today. And they were required to do it live every single day. So my job was to verify. Yeah, and I audited them there every single day. We used a service called Media Monitors that does real-time monitoring, and they upload the feed within an hour. So we could go back and we could listen almost in real time to make sure that the client was getting exactly what they paid for. So my first job there was what we called the traffic coordinator, and I would go listen to these ads. So starting on Monday, I'd listen to 8 hours of food ads, and then by Friday, I was starving every single week. And I go, oh my God, I have to go eat Carrabba's. And it became like my Friday night dinner spot every single week. And this is how I figured out that advertising worked. Because when you listen to that many commercials, it makes sense after a while. And so I had to go try it. And then I found this with all the clients that I ended up getting assigned to, because I worked on more than just Carrabba's. Eventually, I was probably one of the top traffic people at the agency. And I've always been a very ambitious person. And so they promoted me into a media buyer position. So I would go place the ads with the different radio stations and negotiate rates and things like that. And some of my clients ended up being AT&T, SodaStream. We helped launch SodaStream here in the United States. Arby's, Sleep Number, FanDuel. I helped relaunch Zest in Canada. So that might be a cool project. That was around 2011, 2012. So a bunch of different really cool projects that I got to work on. And so that's
interesting.
Yeah. So I went from that. And at some point in that, I'm like, you know what, this wrestling thing just didn't pay the bills like I was hoping it was. And the truth be told, I'm 6'2", 240. So I'm a big boy. And when I was wrestling, I was 275. So I've always been a pretty stout guy. But I never had the bodybuilder look, never been cut. Like the cut, like they want you to look the Lex Lugers of the world, or you know, who is it now? John Cena's and the Rocks and the Randy Ortons, you know, those guys who look like freaking superheroes because, you know, they have the bodies of superheroes. And I never had that body. So I was never prepared to get the right opportunity for me to go into it. So totally on me, but it ended up like everything, right? One door opens when another door closes, and it became an opportunity in disguise. So I quit wrestling about midway through my stint at that ad agency. And I was really just enjoying that. And so that was really my foray into the professional and advertising world. And then just to make it transition, I got laid off with, you know, a lot of the company, which is another long story. Probably shouldn't be airing all their business, but we got 66% of the company got laid off at one time because we lost our biggest advertiser, which eventually came back. But I was part of that 66%. But again, when one door shuts, another door opens. I got a job at a marketing agency that was based in the automotive vertical. Where we helped to transition it from being a video portion of the company that we were working at to a data strategy portion, which, you know, 2012, 2013 was revolutionary for what we were doing in the industry. No one was really doing that yet. And so that was my first foray into marketing. And when we started putting all this data strategy, and I realized that it was just putting a puzzle together to reach the right people, the right amount of times, which, you know, I discovered from the advertising portion that marketing is really freaking cool. And it led me to really discover that marketing is like three things that ultimately meet. It's math meets psychology that meets art. And when you get those three things in unison, you make loads of money.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a lot of fun, isn't it? Like it is. And sometimes though, I think that clients don't like when you mentioned you're in the automotive industry, and I shared with you, and everybody knows who listens, that I was in the marketing director of a car dealership. And I think that the people that don't know how marketing works, especially digital marketing, they think that they don't know what we do, and they think that we just push a couple of buttons on a keyboard and make things happen. Now, certainly we use a keyboard, but like there's so much more to it in regards to coming up with the right creative, figuring out the right audience of who you want to reach and what message you're going to reach them with, and interpreting the data and finding out, you know what I mean? Like, but that's why it's so much fun, because it is like building a puzzle. Like if for instance, if you're going to do marketing automation and figure out the customer journey and what parts of that customer journey you're going to create content for, and what part of it you're going to automate, and where you're going to, you know, where you're going to have your conversion goals and take the customer through the journey to end up eventually becoming a customer. You know, it's complicated. It's not easy to do. Do you find that it leverages both sides of your brain? Like, do you like it because you're using the analytical side of your brain? Now, I don't know if this is true anymore. I've had some people tell me this isn't true anymore. The left brain, right brain side of your brain, but whatever.
Yeah.
The left, you know, your left brain is more analytical, right brain more creative. Do you find that it stimulates both of those sides of your brain, and that's why you enjoy it so much?
Yeah, absolutely. Even, you know, my wife tells me that same thing all the time. She's like, there is no left brain, right brain anymore. I'm like, okay, well, whatever. Yeah. But it's funny. I have what you call the golden brain, and it's that you would, in theory, use those both parts equally. And the reason that I discovered this is when I was a kid, I was trying to do everything left-handed when I was growing up, and my parents decided it was a right-handed world. So they would always take everything out of my left hand and put it in my right hand. And so I would naturally try and gravitate left, and then I'd be forced to use right. And And now I can I'm ambidextrous. So I can throw a football with both hands. I can shoot basketballs. I can even write with both hands. So I like to believe that has some type of effect on the creative side and the analytical side coming together. Yeah. And because of that, marketing was the perfect outlet for me, because it's like you said, if we're using the automotive as an example, right? The Google Zero Moment of Truth or whatever, the study came out years ago, but there were 16 different touch points that someone had to go through before they were willing to buy a car. And we found out someone would only go to 1.4 dealerships before they were ready to buy a car. So if someone stepped foot on a lot, you know that it was your sale to lose. And the reason that people buy is because of salespeople. And the reason that people leave is because of salespeople. So as a marketer, it's our job to figure out those 16 touch points and to put the content in front of them at the right time, which could be a 6 to 9 month buying period, in order to nurture them along into the path where they're comfortable enough to come to the dealership to talk to a salesperson. And so how cool is that? You get to use the psychology to figure that out. And then you realize that the artwork that you're going to create is going to influence those people differently through each step of that process. And so if you want them to move quicker, use more reds and yellows. If you want them to trust you more, use more blues. Like there's all these like color psychology and shape psychology and everything that goes into creating the artwork, as well as the offers and the urgency that you put behind it to really get someone to take action. And that's marketing in a nutshell, right? And that's why it's so cool, because it's more than just saying, hey, I've got this, come buy it. It's when you really way more dig into it, like, again, a good marketing program that has that figured out, the sky's the limit for revenue gain.
So you've mentioned something a couple of times now, the importance of data. So in even off camera, I think we were talking about data. So could you tell me a little bit more about that, like how you were able to use data and how you use data and the importance of data in creating marketing campaigns that are actually going to work?
Absolutely. And this is where it really stimulated my mind when I started that company. So I started there and I became pretty good at reading the data. And the data, we had several different options to read this data. So we had the dealership DMS data, which is just their
dealer management system.
Yeah, their data management system, which is their record keeping, right? And so we found what person was, where they lived, with zip codes, how old they were. So what kind of age range wanted to buy a car, what even down to what kind of color car that they wanted to buy. And we could start to figure all of this out to start targeting like people in order to put out that data in front of them, right?
Yeah.
And so we combined that with something called PULC data, which is registration data that the state is required to collect of automotive dealerships, right? And so we could start to cross-reference that dealership DMS data with that PULC data, and it began to give us a really solid start to a data program. Then you can start layering that with just different things like the Experian data and Esri data, zip code profile data, all of this to see, what's the ethnicity of the zip code that you're going at. So if you might be trying to go after this one specific zip code for 25 to 35-year-old mothers who are predominantly white, who are making $60,000 more a year, that gives you a heck of a targeting opportunity to really focus in.
Absolutely.
And so what we used to do is we used to say it was taking the sniper approach to marketing versus the shotgun approach. The shotgun approach is the spray and pray. It's just traditional, throw everything at the wall, see what sticks, and then it worked, right? Well, when you do it correct with a more sniper approach, you know exactly who you're shooting for, and you'll hit them, 50% of the time. And then that way you don't have to spend the $1 million budget anymore. You can spend the $10,000 budget and get the exact same return that you got on the $1 million, except it's more because of the opportunity cost, right? And then once you figure that out, you can scale that data up massively otherwise. And it goes for industries other than just automotive. They have dental industry data. They have data in all different types of industries that you can use to really tell the story.
What about companies that, like, you and I are very familiar with, like the amount of data that car dealers get from knowing they, like, by the time you go to buy your car, you've 9 times out of 10, you've done a financing application, and they know what you do for a career. They know how much money you make. I don't think, if people know that, and it goes into the DMS, as you and I talked about, and it hopefully goes into the CMS. Hopefully the dealership is either syncing that data, those two things together, or handling it some way. But the point I'm trying to make is, like, buying a car or a house, people find out a lot about you. Mortgage broker finds out a lot about you. What about for people like smaller businesses who have smaller budgets? And I'm going to give you a for instance. And I don't know if this is a classic for instance, because everybody always says Dallas plumber. So like, let's just say a plumber or even a home renovation company. Like what about a small mom and pop shop that doesn't have access to all that data to build that around? What is your strategy for helping those types of businesses?
Sure, absolutely. So it depends on the industry. So certain industries have more data provided than other industries. Like I said, as an example, the dental industry, they produce all the same data that the automotive industry does. For plumbers, it's a little bit different, right? I haven't found any like plumber data of saying these are the people that do it, but it's the same type of concept. So the first place we tell everyone to start is get a CMS management system, right?
Okay.
A customer management system. If it's HubSpot, or the one we use a lot is Go CRM, but there's House Call Pro, there's billions of them for different industries.
Tons,
right. And so you start there, and that way you can start logging your jobs, because you have to have some way to keep track of the record anyway, right? We're not living on paper tabs anymore. And so if you start doing that, you collect just the most basic demographic information. What's your birth date? Where do you live? And so just those two pieces of information alone, you can start to layer data on top of other things to start to tell the story. And I mean, we're not talking about breaking the bank right here.
No, we're not.
System, you can get $40, $50 a month, right? As you get bigger and bigger, it scales up with you. So you're not breaking the bank up front until you have clients, which is the beautiful part of living in this data age that we live in. And so you can start doing that. And then when you build a website, you put something called Google Analytics on there. And that helps you to track all the data. So where do people come from? What cities do they come from? If you don't live in a big metro area, let's say you live in a smaller area, we'll tell you all the surrounding cities that people come from. And so you can, again, start to layer that data. So you can look at zip codes and all that, and that tells you where to start targeting. So depending on what strategy you want to develop, either a short-term or a long-term strategy, you can use that data. For like a short-term, you can start targeting on social media by zip code or by a radius of an address, something like that. If you want to go a little bit bigger, you can start doing television programs where you can start targeting by cable systems now, which is going, hey, I want a 10-mile radius of this location, and they can more or less do that now, or zip codes. And then they'll show it to all the video on demand platforms. Or if you want to do a really long-term strategy like SEO, you can start building your SEO strategy, specifically local SEO strategy, around those local places. So if you know that, as an example, we're in Houston, if you want to build out the I'm trying to think of what's like the biggest little town around Katy area of Houston, you can start targeting all about Katy. Or you can start targeting all about Cyprus, or you can start targeting about Pearland. Instead of trying to hit the whole city, you know exactly where your customer base is coming from. So you can layer all that data to really start. And you don't have to be a rocket scientist. You just have to be aware of that it's available and you can use it, and then just get creative with it.
Yeah. Because I'm sure with a population of over 2 million in Houston, a plumber isn't going to want to go to one side of the city and then the next. And then, I mean, you have to try and target people who are hopefully you can target people who are in the same, like within a 10 mile or 15 mile or maybe 20 mile radius in order to, get enough business in order to make it economically profitable for you to continue to operate and then expand with other offices as you in other territories. When I mean territories, other sectors of the city and hiring other staff. So it's so important. So were you able to leverage data? Like, for instance, let's maybe transition back to the cars for a little bit, like in regards to creating buyer personas based on the data. Was that something that you assisted? Because I know you worked with a automotive marketing agency that specialized in helping car dealers and other such people. Were you able to how were you able to leverage the data to create buyer personas, if at all? Just curious.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what we did. So after, I guess, about a year and a half there, I think it was about a year and a half, maybe 2 years, I got promoted into management, and I took my section of the company and I helped transition further away from the video platform to the data management side. And so we ended up, when I took over, I think we 3x or 4x the amount of accounts that we had using the data strategy during my time there. And I helped to take my section of the company from losing, I don't know, $40,000 a year, something like that on a very bad partnership deal. Yeah, we had a very bad partnership deal with an agency out of Florida that was just bleeding them dry, and they didn't know any better at the time. And so we elected to get out of that agency deal about a year in. And then that's where I helped to transition to the data strategy portion. And so once we got out of that, we could sell it in a different way. And like I said, we 4x the amount of accounts we had, and we were making just under 2 million maybe from my section of the company alone in the 2 years that I got into management. And we saw that our average dealership actually grew 6% in market share within 6 months, which is just astronomical when you look at how competitive the industry is. And the reason for that was, again, the data to build the personas and tell the stories. So we were able to leverage Esri zip code data and the buyer personas that they put into place with our own data to really start to hone in on what people were interested in. And so it goes further than just demographic data. It goes as far as, psychographic data too. How do they feel about certain things? Do they follow certain people? And when you can start to target those as an example, business owners, do they follow Tony Robbins and do they make more than $100,000 a year? If so, we want to target them for this vehicle. And then we would set that up. And this was back to before the Cambridge Analytica scandal with Facebook. So we could actually upload those customer lists once we figured it out, who matched that criteria, and then do matching with that data as well. So we could 1% match it, and we could find it's just everybody in the market within about a 15-mile radius, depending on the city, who would drive in to get that kind of car. So we leveraged it very successfully into growing. And like I said, that 6% is just astronomical. Yeah, because there's only so many cars sold in a month, right? It's like a big pie.
Only so many.
And you can only have your piece of the pie. But what happens when you make that piece of the pie, that piece of the pie? Well, I'll tell you what happens, millions of dollars. So
millions of dollars. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
It's a high interest, high competitive industry.
Oh, it's very highly. As someone who worked in it for 7 years as well, it's incredibly competitive, and pulling that off is it's amazing. The Cambridge Analytica kind of screwed things up for a lot of us, and I wouldn't mind talking about what's happened now. Like I used to take, I haven't been in the game for a little while here because of the pandemic and other things, and haven't actually managed a car dealer's campaign, but I don't even know what's possible anymore. But we were taking, we were segmenting the data that you're talking about. And we were taking, and we had the Facebook pixel. And so we were creating audiences based on like, if they were interested. So for used, we were breaking down into vehicle type, car, truck, SUV, van. And if they hit what would be, a lot of people don't understand the terminology of the car dealer. So I'm gonna have to explain these things, and you'll understand, though I know. But if they hit the VDP, which is a vehicle detail page, which for those listening and watching is like a single product page on an e-commerce store. But instead of calling it a single product page, the car dealers call it a vehicle detail page or a vehicle product page, whichever you want to call it. But anyway, it's VDP. And so if they hit the VDP and they didn't hit the thank you page for a test drive or whatever other conversion there was, such as a finance application or whatever, we had those all set up as goals. They didn't hit any conversion metric. We would retarget them with a group of similar vehicles. And we did that for used by type and for new by model. And I will tell you, we did that. And then we created lookalike audiences based on the visitors, traffic visitors. And then not only that, we took the data from the CRM and uploaded it. And we uploaded it to create lookalike audiences for there. And we even segmented some of the people because they had already bought. You know what I mean? So there were so many things we were able to do. It was just absolutely incredible. And we were able to create service-based campaigns based on people who had bought by uploading them and using them as an audience that we wanted to reach. Now, is that all dead because of Cambridge Analytica? Is uploading lists to Facebook dead now?
No, you can still upload lists. They're just not as effective as they used to be because it wasn't the Cambridge Analytical thing that necessarily killed it. It was the iOS update. OS 14.5. Yeah, it killed it. Now half of everybody who opts out just isn't tracked. So the tracking just isn't where it used to be. So that's kind of a shame.
So it wasn't Cambridge Analytica exactly. It was more Tim.
It was the straw that broke the camel's back, I guess, with the iOS update, and it was the start of the hole in the dam was Cambridge Analytica.
Yeah. Do you think Facebook's going to survive?
Absolutely. It's one of the biggest companies in the world.
Yeah, I know, but everybody. I know it is, but there's companies that have failed that have been much bigger than them. But anyway, that's just I don't have any stories, but there's, what's his name? The guy who wrote Good to Great. And he wrote a book about From Good to Great. And he wrote another book about companies. And I can't remember what it was. He talked about all these companies that failed, that in their time got bought up and they made this mistake or that mistake. So I know they're still around and they're still like a behemoth company. And do you think
Blockbuster is the perfect example?
There you go. Netflix killed Blockbuster.
If they don't change with the times, yes, they could die. Or if they do what Enron did, they could implode your, or things like that. But Facebook has always been a very progressive company, and they have some very smart people working for them. Yeah, and so they are always trying to innovate because they understand that if you don't innovate, you're going to die. And so every time, a TikTok platform comes along, because, it was Musical.ly three years ago. And so it became TikTok and then it exploded. Yeah. And so they go, oh my gosh, we've got to do this. And so now they do that. They bought Instagram. And that's the other thing too. Do you know how many companies they're buying all the time to try and improve their technology? So it's their acquisition, like they do things from at least the outside perspective. They do what you would want to do when you own a giant business. Your mergers and acquisitions are spot on. You're always innovating on what you do. You have a very loyal audience, and you have a platform that's giant, and it's become, a verb instead of a noun at this point.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's go Facebook.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, it's pretty amazing. Yeah, absolutely. So what other ways can data be leveraged then that you've seen in your career and in working with your agency and working with your clients besides some of the ways you've already mentioned?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I have a more diverse experience too, in that I got tired of the automotive industry for a while. It's uber competitive. And I don't know if you're aware of this, but especially being in management at the company I was in, if your strategy is not right and you miss your target on the first week of the month, auto dealers have a tendency to get very upset because we're talking millions of dollars here, right? Yeah. And the automotive industry is a lot like sports, and that everybody's job is on the line every single month. And so if you start off that first 7 days poorly, you'll have auto dealers, GMs calling at you, cursing you out, saying unkind things about your character, your family. And at some point, it was just not an environment that was conducive to personal or professional growth anymore. So I ended up, I got my EMT and my firefighter license while I was working in the automotive industry. I'm a very ambitious person, and I like helping people. Yeah, absolutely. So I volunteered while I was doing that, and I got a good background in healthcare. So I'm like, man, what if I could do marketing in healthcare? And so the opportunity came up for me to go to a company here in Houston that they built software for community health centers in addition to the GE healthcare platform. And they also were building a revenue cycle management program, which is the people who bill out for hospitals and community health centers and then call them and bring in the revenue. And then they take a percentage of the tickets that they collect, and that's how they get paid. Yeah. And so this company was stagnant. It had been stagnant for a few years, and my wife happened to work for them at that time. And she goes, hey, you need to talk to my husband. Like, they sat through a marketing presentation at the company meeting, and everyone was falling asleep. It was boring to them, according to what my wife said. Right. Yeah. And so marketing should be fun. Marketing should never be the most boring.
Never, ever be boring.
Yeah, exactly. It's the exciting part of business, which is why I love it so much. And so my wife said, hey, you need to talk to this guy. He's helping all these auto dealers make tons of money, and he'd be a great fit here. So I went in, I met with this company, and we had a great rapport right off the bat. And so they ended up hiring me on to be their marketing executive. And the first year in, we came in and we redid the whole strategy from everything. So we redid the web design, we redid the trade show materials, we redid all the flyers, we started a pay-per-click campaign, we redid the SEO campaigns, we redid our content. And this was me being a marketing company of one.
How did you make the decision to redo everything? Again, was it data?
No, not quite. So part of marketing is that pizzazz. It's that pop.
Okay.
Right?
So all this stuff.
And everything was very sterile. So it was white with a light blue. Their company color was a light blue. That makes sense. And that's healthcare, right? That's when you think healthcare, you think white and blue, right? But what if they were doing all of the cool projects? Like one of the things that they specifically did was use Tableau, and they called it data analytics, that they focused on for these health centers in order to help these companies bring in more patients and get more revenue and all these really cool things with it, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm like, hey, this is exciting. It's a software. It's not traditional healthcare. So why don't we start marketing it as exciting? So we ended up doing 3D rendered videos of all these things flying through for revenue cycle management and for data management. And, after we get off the podcast, I'll send you a couple of links just so you can look at it to see what it is, in case you want to include them in a post or anything as well.
Yeah.
But, so we redid it and we made it exciting. And then we knew that our number one target was trade shows. That's where we were going to meet people. And then we knew that we had about an 18-month buying cycle just based off the data that we had.
18 months. Okay. Here's a key point. Data can tell you how long your buying cycle is.
Exactly. And it was government contracts. It's community health centers, which is they serve the underserved population of America. So the people who can't afford to go to the really nice hospitals, you always have to have somewhere to go. And so the government funds these community health centers. And they're a wonderful, beautiful thing. I'm a huge fan of the value that they provide just the general world. They're great for that, right? And so you can go and get your dental health check, your heart cardiologist health check, and any other health checks that you need with a primary care all in one place, or you can go to even community hospitals so you won't get turned down. So they serve a wonderful purpose to the community. And so, but we knew it took about 18 months because it was a cycle, the buying cycle.
Yeah.
But since we could come in, my goal was to revamp the material and then to shorten that buying cycle to 9 months, because I thought we could do it. Actually, I was shooting for 12 months, but I tell people 9 months just to be aggressive. And so we redid all this material. And one of the biggest things that we did were shoot a bunch of testimonial videos at the conferences. So actually, let me back up. So the conferences is where we would make the majority of our contact and the majority of our sales. One of the things that you can do at almost any conference is you can buy the attendee list, which is invaluable. Data exactly for what you know, because they're in the market to buy what your product is, even if they don't know about your product. So
I didn't even know you could do that.
Absolutely. So you could start getting them into your funnel, and then we would send them email marketing because we had their contact information. Then we could upload their cell phone numbers into Facebook, and then we could run targeted ads, retargeting to those specific people. And then it's just the frequency that we need to go. So there's something called the marketing rule of sevens. I'm sure you're familiar with it, but for your audience, you might not be.
Oh, go ahead.
Sure. So the marketing rule of sevens was a maxim developed in the 1930s by the movie industry. And it saw that someone needed to see a movie poster at least 7 times before they would take action to go into the theater and watch the movie. And that was 100 years ago.
Yeah.
So what is it now with the invention of television and cable and the internet and video on demand and YouTube and everything that's vying for attention? Exactly. And so when I was working at the ad agency, we saw that the average flight of a commercial, which is how long you would run a set of commercials for, would be played out at around 2,600 GRPs or gross rating points, meaning that the average person in the market saw it about 20 times. So the answer to that question of how much does someone need to see probably falls somewhere between 7 and 20. That's the exposure that we have to shoot for. So we know that over the 18 months, they would see them, they would send a quarterly email. This is before I got there. They would send a quarterly email. They might do a social post once a month. They'd see them at a trade show every 2 months. So the frequency just wasn't there to be able to get there. Eventually they'd say, yes, I'm interested. They'd give the ability to go sign up with or talk to a sales agent, and they'd begin the sales process. But so our goal was to cut down that time frame. And that's exactly what we did. So we went to one of those conferences, and we pulled everyone into a room, and we shot about 12 testimonial videos. Part of the biggest sticking point for this company was that once we got to the sales process, they would have to call at least 3 references in order to be able to comfortably move forward with it. It's government work. It takes a while. So by shooting these testimonial videos, what we did is we replaced the need for them to actually call these people. And they go, you want to hear from perfect people? Perfect. We've got 12 testimonial videos of this service that we'll send you right now. And that alone cut that buying cycle in half, because they no longer had to go call those people and get a hold of them and schedule time to chat and all of that. It was instantaneous.
They already heard them. They'd already heard them. They'd already heard their endorsement. That's brilliant.
Exactly. And so we use that data strategy to figure out those people and to keep reaching them and to keep reaching them. And we know that testimonial video is going to be the last step. So not only did we reach them after that, when they were in that buying cycle and that purchase stage, we could hit them with those testimonial videos over and over and over until the point where they go, hey, you've got to see this. And they take it to their boss. Their boss would sign off on it and we get a contract. So this worked really, really well, to the tune of, we made about 1.3 million more in first year contracts. Granted, they signed 3-year contracts, but 1.3 million is what was tracked. First year I was there, en route to, I believe it was their first $20 million year in their 20-year company history. And a lot of that was being tracked back to the revolutionary size of the marketing we did. Plus they hired a couple of really, really talented salespeople, and they kept developing all these awesome standalone products that community health centers had never seen. And so you combine those 3 factors at once, and it just saw explosive growth for this company. And it was really fantastic.
That's amazing. So they went from just so I heard you correctly, they went from 1.39 million to 20.
They added 1.3 million in first year contracts, more than anything they'd ever done in their company history in a sales cycle. So I don't remember the exact numbers. This was 5-6 years ago, but it was $1.3 million, and it could have been 16 or 8, whatever it was.
Whichever. I just wanted to make sure I understood.
Yeah, it ended up at their first $20 million year in their 20-year company history.
Yeah. Which is significant, obviously.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so this whole time you're working for all these different companies and gaining experience, which is one of the most, when you talked about film and television, right? The most valuable thing in film and television, correct me if I'm wrong, is credits. They don't give a crap about anything else but how many credits you have. What I mean credits, how many credits have you been credited in a movie or TV show, whether you've been a director or an actor or all those things. Now, of course, winning an Oscar and Golden Globes and all that thing. But is that true, though? Is it the statement I just made that when you're first starting out, it's credits that you want to get assigned here? It shows experience.
From an acting standpoint, probably. And then once those doors get open, it's easier to maneuver around. There's also things called Q ratings, which is how favorably an audience responds to you. I don't even know if they still use this. This is what they taught us in college, but those Q ratings are how audience responds to you, and then they look at the box office. Ultimately, revenue is
revenue is the driver of
everything. And then in TV, the type of advertisers you can bring in with the quarter hour rating. So you look at quarterlies, and it's almost instantaneous data now, so you can do it.
Yeah.
But
the point I'm trying to make, to a degree, people care about whether you have experience, because credits would dictate experience. To me, anyway, somebody has no credits and somebody has credits, they have experience. You're getting experience from doing all these things. At what point were you motivated to start your own? Like to just, you realize you're good at something, and you're like, I don't want to say the word, but like iced tea in this video on YouTube. I think it's ice. I think it's iced tea. It's either iced tea. It's not ice cube. It's iced tea. Yeah, it's iced tea. It's an F it. He says F it, See, the name of the video on YouTube is called F it video. And it's an explicit word. It's like, you reach this point where you're going to ask that girl out and you say, F it. I don't care if she says no, I'm going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
And, at what point did you reach that? At what time did you reach that point where you're like, screw it, I'm going to start my own agency?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so, my wife had quit that company by that point. I was in my second year or something like that, and we saw that we had a very successful year. And granted, this company was paying me well, and my wife was a big driver in this, and I'll tell you why in just a minute.
Okay, I'm very interested in about that.
Yeah, they were paying me well. And they go, thank you for all of this hard work that you made with this first year with this company. As a thank you, we would like to give you an $8,000 raise. And then I started doing the math. And I'm like, $1.3 million. Yeah. $8,000. and the scales of justice seemed a little bit off with everything that we were doing. And, I was doing the job of about 5 different people at that point on the marketing team. I'm an incredibly hard worker, and I hate being bored. So I'm a busybody. So I'll do everything. I've learned how to do everything. But because of that, my wife, being the smarter of the two of us, she goes, why are we making all of this money for everybody else and making penny on the dollars for us? And I go, aha, you're right. And the light bulb went on, and Illumination Marketing was born. And that was about 5 years ago at this point. And so there's 2 real reasons. So that was going to be the first one. So my wife said a lot of unkind things about my character to me that I needed to hear about my lack of fortitude. Because, it takes a lot of risk to quit a 6-figure-a-year job to go out on your own and
it does
take that risk.
Yep.
And especially her, she was doing it full time at that point. And so there was no fallback plan. So it scared the bejesus out of me to do it. But she said a lot of things that I needed to hear. And I am forever grateful for my wife for doing that. And so that was the catalyst that got us to start. The second is that I have an autistic daughter, and we were living in pretty close to an area of Houston called City Center at that time. And there was a wonderful place called the Houston Texans Grill. And we loved that place. It was in City Center.
Houston Texans Grill.
Houston Texans the NFL football team, right?
Okay.
And it seems like they could have everything you could possibly want. They had a great location. They had a great bar. They had great food that came out. They even had the Texans coming in on a Tuesday to do live radio remotes from there.
Oh, wow.
It was fantastic. We loved it. It was one of our favorite places. Our daughter, being autistic and about 10 years old at the time, didn't eat a large variety of food. Anyone with an autistic child knows that it's always a struggle to try and get them to eat anything. But this is one place that she absolutely loved. So it became one of our 3 rotational places when we went out to eat. So one day we went up there, we went up the elevator, it was right to our left. We look, and there's just a sign on the door. She goes to open the door's locked. We read the sign. It says, "Thank you for the last 5 years. We've gone out of business." And she goes, "I don't understand. Why can't we go in? I want to go in." And my daughter, she's smart as a whip, but she took a second for it to really register what it is. And we had to explain business economics to him. And then me and my wife and my daughter went to one of our other places. And me and my wife sat down and we started talking, and we go, why did this place go out of business? They had probably everything that you could possibly want. And then we figured it out. They didn't do any marketing. Even though they had the Texans name and all of that, they didn't do any marketing. And everyone knows that the big nights, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday at a restaurant. And so if you don't market for those nights, you're going to go out of business. And we've told this to several restaurants who've gone out of business since. So it's like, man, we have a skill set that could have helped these people keep building their dream and help it to keep, pushing the food and the community and everything. We could have helped this place stay in business. And so it was those 2 factors that really drove us to want to start our own company, to help more than just big corporations make money, but we also wanted to help the little guys at the same time. And then what we could end up doing is leveraging some of the big corporations' money coming through us to help some of the smaller guys go up in status to where they could become bigger and help hire people in the community. And then we all grow together. And so it's just moving money throughout the community. And we take our little bitty share of it to help keep pushing it along. And it was a great decision. And I am forever grateful for that my wife did that. And I'm forever grateful for the healthcare company that hired me away from the automotive space. I'm forever grateful for the automotive space that hired me off the advertising line. So,
and everything was built upon one thing after another to give you even more and more experience and more skills and, more and more exposure to be able to get to what you're doing today. It's amazing how, Rome wasn't built in a day, they say. And, there's a lot of young people now that would just want to be in a position, at least from my experience and what I understand and read about, the work ethic for some younger people. And I'm not going to label all of them this way, but it's they want everybody wants to be a social media influencer right now. They want to make the $50 million a day. I'm being facetious, of course.
Yeah.
Without doing the work, the preparatory work that got them there. You know what I mean? Like the staircase.
I always hearing the stories of it took me 20 years to become an overnight sensation.
That's what I'm talking about.
And that's and especially in the professional wrestling world, right? You have to be ready for when the WWE or AEW, whoever it is now, calls.
Yeah, whatever they're called.
But that means that you had to put 20 years of bodybuilding into getting to the position where when they call you, you're ready to go. And so it takes all of that time. And some people are a little bit luckier than others, but unless you believe Gene Simmons, there is no luck. It's only when preparation meets opportunity. And so that's when it
that's an interesting, James Simmons has a very interesting philosophy as well. There's no such thing as luck. It's when preparation meets opportunity. And but you went and created
a couple of other great stories with this too.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, sure. So when I approached the owner of the company for that healthcare company of going, hey, I think it's time that I leave to go start my own thing. It's interesting because the first thing he said to me is, I knew from the day I hired you that you weren't going to stay here for long, but I knew that you were so talented that we had to do it. And so I'm like, I always took that as a giant compliment. And I go,
oh, for sure.
And since I was a marketing team of one at that point, he didn't want to be left out. They take a while on their decisions on who to hire and what to do. And so I started talking to him. I'm like, would you be interested in considering, coming on as our first client, at least for the interim, to help you transition over to whoever you want in-house? Because they really, really, really wanted someone in-house, which, I don't. You needed to be able to walk into his office and go, hey, I need you now, because he wasn't the best at returning phone calls, right? You have to, he's that kind of guy. He's busy. Yeah. And so he goes, you know what? I'd be willing to do that. And he goes, what would you charge me? And I was making 6 figures a year at that point. I'm like, okay, how about this? And he goes, don't you think you should charge a little bit more if you're going to be doing this, this, and this, and there's no overhead? And he gave me an immediate business lesson without me even realizing it. And I am forever grateful. So he started me off with a 5-figure a month contract to launch our business. And that's why till this day, like, I just rave about how good of a person this guy is. His name is Joe Cragen.
Joe Cragen.
Shout
out to Joe. You're the man.
Shout out to Joe, right? He probably will never watch this podcast, but he's amazing. And Lorraine Cragen too, his wife, she runs it with him, and Cam Hendricks, who is their chief strategy officer, all of them together. They gave that opportunity, which really launched our company. So we've never had a month under 5 figures since we started our company. And most marketing agencies don't have that luxury.
No, they don't, James. Don't.
Yeah. So while we were doing that, we actually sold our first client while I was still working at the healthcare company. And it was a local Mexican restaurant here in the northwestern part of Houston called Ambree's Social Mexican Kitchen. And so they signed on with us, and we got that client. And so we were rocking and rolling. The first month we came on with Ambree's, we helped them raise revenues 23.3%. And they were making roughly 24 times ROI on what we were charging them. And so we knew from that first client, that first day, plus that one opportunity that came, that we would be set for the rest of our life, because if we can help other people make money, we'll always be able to get a small portion.
Yeah. And that's like Zig Ziglar said, you can help enough. If you can help enough people get what they want, you'll get what you want, and you'll become very wealthy doing it, especially. Because one of the most, you and I both know that the most expensive part of business is what? Customer acquisition. Lead generation specifically. Lead generation. It's costs more money to acquire a new customer than it does to sell to an existing one or get a referral from an existing one. Exactly. And so when you have that skill set of being able to, do the things that you're talking about, it's no wonder doors open for you. Here's a question though that I hope you don't mind, and you don't have to answer this. You can plead the fifth. And although it's nothing incriminating, but you've mentioned I'm a pretty open things. Book. Well, but this is personal though. You've mentioned a person several times, and your wife. Yeah. Now, did you meet your wife before you were like doing marketing? Because I know she's your business partner.
Yes, absolutely. And so fun story.
I want to know how you met her. And like, for instance, it's interesting that the two of you do the same thing and have the same kind of skill sets. Like my wife, she's in pharmacy. Like she's not in pharmacy right now, but she doesn't have a clue. She couldn't even, like, I kind of tried to teach her what I do a little bit to help me in some ways, but it's just, it's not her thing. And so I'm interested in how you met her, just because how you came together, because you have such similarity. Yeah. And how you have been able to overcome the challenges of working with your spouse.
Absolutely. This is a question we get asked all the time at networking events and things like that. So my wife is probably the most charismatic person I've ever met, and she is supremely talented in everything she does. And she discounts herself so much on her skill set, but she's truly just the most amazing person I've ever met. So, but fun story. While I was wrestling, so we're looking back around 2005, 2006, I had a tag team partner. Well, I guess I didn't start tagging with him until 2007, but he was one of my best friends. He was my best friend at the time. And what he did on the side to generate money outside of wrestling was he was a music teacher. And so my wife was dating another guy at that point, and she went to his house to have a music lesson while I was hanging out with that guy recording music. I also play guitar. We were in a band for a while. And so I was in one section of the house recording some tracks while he was doing the lesson, but I saw my wife from across the room. I'm like, oh my God, she's the most stunning woman I've ever seen in my life. No exaggeration. I'm like, that is my dream woman, looking at her right there. Mm-hmm. So it took a couple of years. Her and that other guy broke up. And I was helping out with a band camp for children that summer. And she decided she wanted to come down and see one of the performances of what the kids were doing. Mm-hmm. And so she came down and we started hanging out on the beach and we started talking. We just said, hey, we should go on a date sometime. And she's like, perfect. And so we ended up getting back past the summer and we went on a few dates. We went on 3 dates. And then I kissed her at the end of the movie that we watched. And then I'm like, oh man, this is the greatest. And I've always been a stupid, shy person up until the last few years. Cause now I'm like, what the hell? I've got nothing to lose. I've got everything. I want. And so, but at the time, still crazy shy, especially with the most beautiful woman I've ever seen. Kissed her. Mm-hmm. It took me 3 dates to work up the courage even to do that, just because I thought of how amazing she was. So we did that. I kissed her. I tried to call her the next day. Nothing. I'm like, well, that's weird. I thought this date went really well. I tried to call the next day. Nothing. Went really weird. Tried to call the next day. Nothing. And she wasn't picking up my phone calls. I'm like, well, I guess I screwed this one up. And she ended up dating another guy. So we broke up. We just stopped dating. We kind of got discommunicated there for a while. And that was in 2009. And so we both went on to do different things. She went on a different career path. She went on to date that guy for a while. I went on to have another long-term relationship. Eventually, she broke up. She got out of a relationship. This is in 2014 at the same time I did in 2014. And we managed to get reconnected through Facebook. And then from then on, from day one, we did a little bit of growing up and we became the right person for each other. And so she went through her career path. I went through my career path. We kind of intersected the career paths at the healthcare company. And then it was that one big defining moment that really, she used to manage bands and she used to do marketing for all different types of small businesses. And she has a really diverse background too. She'd be a great interview too, if you ever decide to talk to her.
I was going to ask you about, that. Excuse me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because we always love hearing people's stories. That's for sure.
Yeah. So it wasn't the right time. But in 2014, it became the right time. And, in 2017, we decided to start our own marketing company together. So how do we do it? There's some days that's tougher than others. Set up I have an office set up. She has a different office set up. So we don't work in the same office anymore. Granted, we work in the same building. And then even at the house, we have different offices. So my office is downstairs, her office is upstairs. So we can separate anytime we need to. And then we come back for important things. We have meetings and things like that. But we set the boundaries of we need some space sometimes in order to make sure, because, I love working with my spouse. It's amazing. She's my best friend and she's everything I could ever want in life. She's been entertaining and charismatic, and she's just perfect, right? But people who spend so much time together, sometimes it can be challenging. So you set those boundaries to where you have a little bit of different space, whether it's me going to a different sales meeting or her going to a different sales meeting or whatever it is, and then you come back together at the end of the day. And if you spend only 15 hours together instead of 24 hours together, sometimes that helps a lot.
Yeah, sometimes it's there's this fine thing between time in regards to in regards to marriage. Not that this podcast is about marriage, but we're just talking about something neat. Is if it's like baking a cake. If you put the cake in and you leave it in, don't put it in long enough, it's not going to bake properly. And if you leave it in too long, it's going to burn. And I have frankly found that it's the same thing with relationships and with marriage. If you spend too much time with your significant other, you're going to drive each other nuts. But if you don't spend enough time together, well, then that's going to be a problem as well. So there is a fine line and a balance, not a fine line, a balance between spending just enough time together. So I'm glad that you've been able to work that out. So what's the future for marketing illumination and James Kaatz in your business?
Kaatz, it fools everybody. Don't worry about
it. Sorry. Kaatz. I'm so sorry.
Oh, it's all good, man. It happens to everybody. The 2 A's, it fools everybody. What's next, right? So we've been fortunate enough where we've made a good amount of money, and we've been able to help everybody from upstarts who have 0 clients all to the way to the big guys like GE Healthcare. We've helped Group 1 Automotive. We've helped Kelsey Siebold, who's a really big group around here. Allied Power Group, who does turbines. They're a 9-figure a year company. So we've been able to help all ranges of different people. We have all ranges of clients, and that means that we can continue to help people. So what is our next step? It's just continuing to grow. We grow, and when we get to grow, we get to help our community. We get to help put money back into it. We get to help hire people. We get to help make the dreams of small business owners. And it's all about growing together. Because at the end of the day, the money, it's nice, but it doesn't matter. It really doesn't. It's the pursuit of helping your fellow man around you, which really, I think it's the Dalai Lama who said the secret to happiness is helping others.
It's true.
And I'm a
secret to living is giving in so many different things. Like
it is. And the money is a byproduct of helping enough people. Yeah. And like Zig Ziglar said, right? Yeah. And so that's the next step for us, is just to continue to scale our operations in order to help more people. And by generating more revenue, that means we can invest back into the nonprofits that we help and things like that too.
That's awesome.
So that's our next step for sure. We've become a full service agency when we weren't when we started. So we've expanded our product lines, we've expanded our team, we've expanded our revenue. We're expanding exactly the rate we want to. The next step is just massive growth. And it's scary. It's really scary.
It can be, can it? Absolutely. Well, hey, it's been a pleasure having you here. How can our listeners connect with you online if they want to?
Yeah, absolutely. You can find us at our website. It's www.marketingillumination.com. You can look me up on LinkedIn. I'm certainly there, as well as our companies. Our companies are all across the social medias. We're trying to get back to doing it. It was a weekly YouTube series for a while called Marketing Monday, where we try and explain some type of marketing concept within about 4 minutes. And we're about to start back up with those. So certainly find us on YouTube, subscribe to the channel to keep learning things. Absolutely. And if you're a business in need of marketing help, especially one that is doing a little bit more in revenue at this point, but needs some of that direction or something to fill in the gaps, we're an excellent option for that. Because like, as an example, with our videographer, we like to say we do Hollywood level work without the Hollywood level prices. And we can make it very affordable to help big companies scale.
Hey, that's awesome. I'll make sure to put your LinkedIn profile and website in the show notes for people to be able to connect with you.
I appreciate it.
I just want to say it's been a pleasure having you here. I've thoroughly enjoyed talking to you. If you'd like to come back on another episode and future episode and talk to us, I'd be more than happy to have you. And if no pressure whatsoever, but nevertheless, I've really enjoyed talking to you today.
Yeah, it's been my pleasure, Matt. Thanks again for inviting me on, and it's been a great conversation. And I'd love to come back sometime.
Right on. Have a great day.
All right, you too.